Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to my channel. This story isn't really about money. It's about what happens when we choose to start small, one coin, one habit, one choice at a time. These are the quiet bricks that build a stronger life. This is the story of a man who thought he'd never have enough. Chris worked hard, but somehow his wallet was always empty. Before the month ended, bills came and went, paychecks came and went. He started to believe that money just slipped through his fingers like water. Then, one quiet evening, his grandmother handed him a small glass jar and a gentle challenge. Save just 5 coins every night, no matter what. It sounded silly. How could 5 coins make any difference? Chris didn't know it yet, but those tiny drops were about to fill more than just the jar. They were about to change the way he saw himself, his money, and his future. Chris leaned back in his chair and stared at his phone screen. The banking app showed a number so small it almost looked like a joke. Payday had been less than a week ago. He rubbed his eyes. Where does it all go? He muttered. The fridge wasn't empty yet, but he knew how this story went. A few days from now, he'd be living on instant noodles and cheap coffee. Again, it wasn't that he didn't work. Chris had a full-time job at a small print shop, designing flyers, posters, and the occasional wedding invitation. His pay was steady, but somehow life always found a way to take more than it gave: rent, groceries, bus fare. Just this once, lunch out with coworkers, a streaming subscription he forgot to cancel twice. By the time he noticed where his money had gone, it was already gone. One Sunday afternoon, Chris took the bus to his grandmother's house. She lived in a small, tidy place at the edge of town, surrounded by rosebush. She tended like old friends. Grandma's house always smelled like cinnamon and fresh bread. She hugged him at the door. "You look tired," she said, leading him inside. "I'm fine," Chris said. "Just work." They sat at the kitchen table, sipping tea from mismatched cups. Chris found himself complaining again about money. "I swear I try," he said. "I budget, I cut back, but by the end of the month, I'm broke every time." Grandma listened quietly. When he finished, she stood, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small glass jar. It had a faded label on it that read "For rainy days." She set it in front of him. "Save 5 coins a day." Chris blinked. 5 coins? Yes, every night, before bed, no matter what. He laughed. "Grandma, what's that going to do? Buy me a bus ticket in a year?" She smiled. "You'll see, it's not about the coins, it's about the habit." That night, Chris sat on his bed, staring at the jar his grandmother had given him. It looked ordinary, just a glass jar with a metal lid. He dug into his pocket and found some loose change: 2 1-rupee coins, a 2-rupee coin, and a shiny 5. That was more than 5 coins. But he shrugged. Close enough. Clink, clink. The sound was oddly satisfying still. He rolled his eyes. "This is ridiculous," he muttered. "What's a handful of coins going to do?" But when he turned off the light, he noticed something. For the first time in months, he didn't fall asleep thinking only about how broke he was. Instead, he thought, "Well, at least I saved something." The next day, Chris forgot all about the jar. He came home late, ate leftover noodles, scrolled on his phone, and collapsed into bed. The following morning, as he was rushing out the door, he saw the jar on his dresser. "Oops," he said, fishing 3 coins from his desk drawer and tossing them. In clink, the sound made him smile a little. Maybe Grandma was onto something by the end of the first week. The jar had a small pile at the bottom, nothing dramatic, but noticeable each time he added coins. It gave him a tiny spark of pride, of course. Chris's spending habits didn't change overnight. One Friday after work, his friend Marco said, "Let's grab burgers, my treat this time." "Okay," Chris said, relieved. He hadn't wanted to admit his bank balance was nearly zero again, but when the bill came, Marco frowned. "Shoot, I forgot my wallet. Can you cover me?" "I'll pay you back Monday." Chris sighed and handed over his card. By the time Monday rolled around, Marco had forgotten that night. Chris dropped 5 lonely coins into the jar. The clinks didn't sound as cheerful. He muttered, "5 coins won't save me from friends like Marco." Still, he kept going. 2 weeks later, Chris picked up the jar and shook it gently. The coins jingled, filling the room with a cheerful sound. It wasn't much, maybe enough for a small meal, but somehow it felt different. "This is mine," he thought. "I didn't spend it. I kept it." That tiny thought sparked something new. At the supermarket, he reached for a soda, then paused. 55 rupees. He murmured. He glanced at the jar in his mind. "That's 11 days of coins." He put the soda back and grabbed a water bottle instead. One evening, while visiting Grandma again, Chris mentioned the jar. "It's kind of working," he admitted. Grandma smiled, handed him a small notebook with a blue cover. "Write down every coin you save," she said. Chris groaned. "Seriously? That's too much work. Just try," she said. "Writing makes things real." So he tried. Day 1, 5 coins. Day 2, 3 coins. Day 3, 7 coins. Soon, his notebook had neat little rows of numbers. Nothing fancy, but seeing them add up gave him the same quiet pride. As the jar one Saturday, Chris passed a shop window and stopped inside. The latest wireless headphones sat on display, sleek, shiny, perfect. He checked his wallet. He had just enough. His old headphones worked fine, but they were scratched, and one side was taped. He stood there for 10 minutes. "Should I?" Then he thought about his jar. If he bought the headphones, the jar would feel smaller, emptier. He walked away. It hurt a little, but when he dropped his 5 coins in that night, the clink sounded stronger. A month passed. Chris sat at his desk, holding the jar in both hands. It was heavy now, almost too heavy to carry with one hand. He emptied it onto his bed. Coins rolled across the blanket. Rupees, 5s, even a couple of 10s he had tossed in when he felt generous. "Wow," he whispered. It wasn't just coins. It was proof. He counted 478 rupees. Not enough to change his life, but enough to make him feel different, stronger. "Maybe Grandma was right," he said, smiling at work. Chris's colleague, Neha, noticed he seemed lighter, less stressed. "What's up with you?" she asked. Chris chuckled. "You'll laugh. I've been saving coins in a jar." Neha tilted her head. "Seriously? That's it?" "Yeah, 5 coins a day. Doesn't sound like much, right? But it adds up." To his surprise, Neha didn't laugh. She smiled. "That's actually kind of cool." The next day, she showed him a jar she'd brought from home. "I'm trying it too." Chris felt a warm pride spread through him. His small habit was spreading. One evening, Chris came home exhausted. He tossed his bag on the floor and collapsed into a chair. The last thing he wanted to do was think about money. But then his eyes landed on the jar. He groaned, pulled a few coins from his wallet, and dropped them in. Clink. Clink, he thought. Patience, that's what this teaches me. wasn't about how much he had tonight. It was about who he was becoming 2 months later. Chris's phone buzzed with a message from his landlord. Rent increase starting next month panic gripped him. "I can't afford this," he muttered, but then he looked at his jar by now. He had over 1,000 rupees saved. It wasn't enough to cover rent, but it gave him something he'd never had before: breathing space for the first time. An emergency didn't crush him completely. He took a deep breath. "I'll figure this out. I have a cushion now." Chris visited his grandmother one Sunday afternoon. She poured him tea, then eyed him carefully. "You look different," she said. Chris grinned. "I've been saving. You were right. The jar's almost full." Grandma chuckled. "It's not about the jar, Chris. It's about the person you're becoming while filling it." Chris frowned. "What do you mean?" "You're learning patience, discipline, and self-respect. Those are worth more than coins." Her words sank deep. Chris realized the jar was more than money. It was a mirror, showing him he could change. One afternoon, Chris saw an online ad. Flash sale -50% off electronics. His heart raced. He had always wanted a new tablet. He checked his savings account. Barely anything. Then he glanced at the jar. The coins glittered in the light. He thought of emptying it out, rushing to the store, but then he paused. "If I break the jar for something I don't really need, I'll lose more than money. I'll lose progress." He closed the ad. For the first time, resisting temptation felt like victory at work. Neha came up to him smiling. "Hey, remember when you told me about saving coins? Look." She pulled out a photo on her phone. A jar half filled with coins. "My daughter helps me drop in coins every night. She thinks it's a game." Chris laughed. "That's amazing." In that moment, he realized something powerful. His small habit wasn't just changing him, it was inspiring others, and that felt richer than money. Not every day was easy. Some nights, Chris came home tired and cranky. He wanted to order food, scroll endlessly, and forget everything. But even on those nights, he pushed himself to drop at least 5 coins into the jar. Sometimes he muttered, "Stupid jar," but he never skipped over time. He noticed something strange. Those 5 coins became a promise to himself, a ritual, a way of saying, "I'm still in control." 3 months after he started, Chris sat on the floor surrounded by jars. The first one was full, heavy with coins. He had started a second jar, then a third. What surprised him wasn't the money, it was how he felt. His old life had been constant stress, every bill a battle, but now he felt calmer, more grounded. It wasn't that he was suddenly rich, he wasn't, but for the first time, he believed he could take control at the office. Neha brought in a glass jar and placed it on her desk. She taped a sign on it, "Team Coffee Fund, 5 coins a day." Soon, everyone in the team joined in. Some dropped coins every morning, some every Friday. The jar filled quickly one Friday. They used it to buy coffee and snacks for everyone. As they sat together laughing, Chris realized that saving wasn't just personal, it could build community too. One rainy evening, Chris's phone broke. The screen shattered when it slipped from his hands. The old Chris would have panicked, but this time he didn't. Went to the bank, deposited his saved coins, and used the money to buy a simple replacement. It wasn't the fanciest phone, but it worked. More importantly, he felt relief. He didn't need to borrow or beg. His small daily habit had given him security on his grandmother's birthday. Chris brought her flowers. As they sat together, he placed a small jar on the table. "What's this?" she asked, smiling. "It's for me to start again," Chris said. "But it's also for you to remind me that you taught me this." She touched his hand gently. "And what did you learn, Chris?" He thought for a moment. "That big changes don't start with big steps. They start with small ones. 5 coins. Every day." Months later, Chris looked around his apartment. His jars were lined up neatly, each one filled with proof of his persistence. He wasn't rich. Not yet, but he had built something more valuable: consistency, confidence, and hope. He smiled to himself and whispered, "If I can do this, I can do more." And for the first time in years, his future felt wide open. This story isn't really about money. It's about what happens when we choose to start small, 1 coin, 1 habit, 1 choice at a time. These are the quiet bricks that build a stronger life. Chris didn't just save coins. He saved himself from fear, from helplessness, from the belief that nothing will ever change. Remember this: you don't need to start big. You just need to start 5 coins a day, 5 minutes of effort, 1 small step forward. Over time, those small steps create something bigger than you ever imagined: confidence, freedom, and a brighter tomorrow.